So patriarchy on its own, we typically define it as a system where men are given access to resources and they have control and power over women. That's typically how we define the word. It's very simple and in a lot of ways doesn't really do the work we need it to do for us to do something about patriarchy. And so when I'm defining American patriarchy, I'm not blaming any individual group of people. I'm saying, let's think about what our founding fathers envisioned for their nation. And let's go back into thinking of what they were experiencing at the time when they're writing the Constitution and they're writing the Declaration of Independence. They've just won the Revolutionary War. They were kind of this ragtag group of men, to be honest. We've all seen Hamilton. And they were very concerned that they were going to lose power in a nation that they had just fought so hard to gain power in. They see this revolutionary spirit spreading across the nation. And so they say, wait, we need to come up with a system. And they come up with one that is going to favor them, that's going to make it so that they can retain power, they can retain control. So they're writing the Constitution with that in mind. So in the Constitution, they're identifying what it means to be human in the United States. And they're only talking about really themselves. They say men get to vote, men get to own land, men get to represent themselves in business decisions. These are just some examples. They completely ignore women in the Constitution. They don't write about them at all. But we do know that they define women by letters that they write to their wives and to their daughters. They define women as those who should be docile, those who should be controlled by the men in their lives, that they should not vote. So in their system that they're setting up, there is already this binary, that there is man and that there is woman. But that binary doesn't include all men and women, actually. And of course, it excludes non-binary people, but it also excludes people who were enslaved. It also excludes their indigenous counterparts. It also excludes poor white people. They're not considering them, right, in this land ownership, et cetera. And so from the beginning, our American patriarchy has been based off of we have to define man, we have to define woman, but we also have to exclude many people from this already problematic gender binary. So everything in my book and everything in my work and in all the ways that I analyze our current country is based off of this definition of American patriarchy, which is the country we've been living in, the system we've been living in. Every law they wrote as a result of that comes from those beliefs. Every system, our educational system, our healthcare system, everything comes back to that original social order, and that is American patriarchy.
Wow, that was perfectly articulated.
Thank you.
And there's so much to it. I mean, I have to admit, I was raised, I went to public schools. White people were a minority where I was. I think it was like mostly Asian and Latino. And then, I think blacks and whites were equal and percentage-wise. And so I was always like, and I got bused into inner cities for the gifted programs or whatever. And so I was just like, oh, I'm not racist. But I really didn't learn about white privilege or become starkly aware of it until COVID.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, you're not aware because we're all in this like fish, like swimming in the water of patriarchy.
Yeah, it's so true. And we've all also been sort of tricked into protecting it and protecting that social order, because if we are told that in order to have the things that you want access to in your nation, right, you want to be able to vote, you want to be able to own land, you want to be able to provide for your family members and your loved ones, instead of us thinking of let's focus on the system that was inequitable from the beginning and was set up to divide us from each other, we've instead been tricked into thinking we're just not fulfilling the roles of American patriarchy well enough. So you'll see women thinking, oh, maybe I need to protect this social order. Maybe I need to vote for it more. Maybe I need to submit to the men in my life more. Or you'll have men who can't maybe provide for their families because societally they were not given the same access to opportunities and resources, thinking, maybe I need to control the women in my life more. Maybe that's why I'm not having given access to the things that I want. We saw it in our most recent elections with trends of Latino men, for example, voting for someone who a lot of people were surprised that they would vote for, But if you, again, understand American patriarchy and then you understand, oh, but I've been told that in order to be a human being in my nation and in order to have access to the opportunities and resources that I need as a human being, I have to play one of these two roles that is presented to me, then it makes sense why so many people feel like it's innate, that it's natural, that it's divine, that it's simply our only option. But if you then think about it as a system that was built, a system that was chosen by a small group of men, in fact, you then realize we can choose differently. We can build something completely different than what has been presented to us as the only option. And so there's many of us who just think and have continued to live our lives protecting something, defending something that doesn't serve us, doesn't serve any of us.
Mm-mm. Wow. And it's so, and awareness, bringing to light is the first step in healing anything, right?
Absolutely.
And the parts of the book that I thought were so fascinating or like really profoundly, it was to learn, you point out who the founding kind of idea makers were of like our modern medical education system, or our, the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Or even the founding fathers and their views of women. So like the real beliefs about women or other races of these people that have established these institutions that our society runs on, and to know their beliefs in psychology, it's like it's a fact and we can't change it.
Yeah.
But once we're aware of their driving psychology, we can go, oh, maybe these are no longer serving us,
Yes.
never were.
Exactly.
But now with new awareness and consciousness, we must change them.
Exactly. And to be aware that they were also very aware of what they were choosing, that also wasn't a mistake, that it wasn't that it was just a product of the time and that we can just assume that that's what everybody would have chosen to do during and post the Revolutionary War. That's not true. There's actual evidence that, number one, they wanted to strategically erase indigenous belief systems, for example, that identified people beyond the gender binary and not only acknowledged them, but saw them as the most wise amongst their people. And our founding fathers were aware of that. So they strategically put indigenous people into schools where they're trying to take away these belief systems and they're trying to erase those belief systems. So again, they were aware, a different way of organizing people. They also knew, Thomas Jefferson specifically, who spent a lot of time in France, was very concerned that Parisian women were emancipated. He did not like that, and he spoke about that a lot. And he says, we're not going to do that in the country that we're building. So he saw an example. He saw another option, and instead, they doubled down on patriarchy. In the book, I talk about how Abigail Adams, in this famous quote, she says, "Remember the ladies." She's talking to the founding fathers. She writes this letter saying, "Do better by us than the monarchy has done. Include us in the nation that you're building." And the men, specifically her husband, writes back saying, and mocks her and says, "We know better than to do that. We are building a republic of men." And so they then write like very specific laws stating that women cannot vote. So even if it might have been assumed during the monarchy that women couldn't participate politically, our founding fathers make it obvious and explicit, and they put it in law. Women cannot participate politically. So we can't even say that they didn't know better and now we know better. No, they knew better. They chose it. It was not a mistake. It was not, a surprise. We shouldn't continue to be surprised by it. That is how they designed this nation. And so we all in our 2025 world need to stop saying, oh, and blaming each other for it, but instead saying, that's what they designed. Is that working for any of us? No. So let's design something different and let's stop combating each other and instead look at, like you said, how is our healthcare system still being impacted by this? How is our educational system still being impacted by this? When we're seeing even again on a national level right now that maps are being redrawn, it's all made up. It's all entirely made up. And so it gives us a lot of power to believe we can also make something else up.